This week on Ecosystemic, meet Antoinette Vermilye, the co-founder of the Gallifrey Foundation. She could be the 16th Doctor, but instead, she opted for saving the oceans.
And someone asked me once, why fishes? And I said, because they don't have a voice.
She doesn't need a TARDIS to work wonders.
We sued a country once and we told them, stop fishing immediately. When tires abrade on the road, they release microplastics. It was 28%.
She will share with us eye-opening facts and enlightening wisdom.
Be braver than I ever was. Trust yourself that you can do more than you think you can do.
So, hello everyone and welcome to Ecosystemic. During our last episode, we took you through a journey on air, lakes. This time we will talk about oceans. With me today, a very special guest, Antoinette Vermilye. She will talk us about her actions for marine preservations and more. So, welcome Antoinette.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm really excited to be here. And thank you for giving me the chance to talk about my most favorite subject, which is the ocean. And that's very timely right now because I was just explaining that there's the release of the movie by David Attenborough, his last tome. Yesterday was his 99th birthday, called Ocean.
Perfect. And it's my pleasure to have you here. So for those who don't know you, who's Antoinette by Antoinette?
Antoinette by Antoinette. So that's a tough one when you have to talk about yourself. I'm usually talking about other things. So I'm a kind of hybrid mixture. Born in the UK, went immediately to West Africa, where I grew up by the ocean, then moved to the Middle East, also by the Red Sea when it was absolutely pristine. And then through chance and life, all of us have zigzag lives. I ended up in Switzerland, where I have remained, but my heart has always been with the ocean. So through various paths and everything, I've ended up back doing what I've always wanted to do, which is basically living my dream of trying to move the needle systemically from any source I can pull on for ocean good. I'll try anything. I'm quite a creative, a little bit of a rebel, and I try not to be too hot-headed, but that sometimes happens.
And frankly speaking, how did you end up here? Like, you don't wake up in the morning and you say, okay, my life goal would be ocean preservation and I will be all in. I think like maybe it's like little event adding up.
Yeah.
And taking you to this.
Before I used to do another job, but I'd always wanted to work in the ocean. So about 20 years ago, we'd been involved in different things. We had done movie productions. The first Discovery Channel documentary on the ocean we were part of back then, but these were very small things. And then after that, I had to get on with life. And then about 20 years ago, we started saying, okay, we're going to start, how do we do this? So we started searching WWF, the International Union of Conservation of Nature. We reached out and started following certain subjects. Still doing my job, my husband's still doing his job. But what we realized is we started to learn and engage very slowly. And bit by bit, you start to, first of all, you enter into something and you learn. And for example, the first thing we did was tuna protection. And we started learning, what works, what doesn't. Could we do it better? Because we both come from business backgrounds. We're not environmental organizations. So we're looking at, and it's awful to say metrics, but in the end, you kind of can keep going and going and going. And sometimes we have to sit there and go, how effective has this action been? Could we have done it differently or better? And then that kind of leads to this almost like a stain that's going out, because then you get into overfishing or into plastic pollution, or you get into bottom trawling, so suddenly all these subjects come up and you realize, oh my God, I can't do all of it. So then the next thing was map who's doing what. And at the time, I felt very meek. Who the hell was I to talk about anything on the ocean? But I'm a deep researcher, fast learner, and thankfully, the scientific community are extremely generous and patient with their time. I apply a great dose of, let me just say, I don't want to say humility, but I don't care if I get humiliated if I say something wrong. Because if you don't say it and no one says it, sometimes there's an idea that ought to be said, or at least saying, why are we doing it the same way all this time? So my journey now has got me very involved in a full range of things, microplastics from tires, endocrine disrupting chemicals from plastics that have an effect on humans, not just on the environment, the types of battery technology that is changing that will have an effect on what we're taking from the ocean. So my world is very eclectic, which I love because I'm ADD, so I can switch subjects. And the second part of it is that I'm always looking at the externalities. So I think this is kind of a Hippocratic oath that any person should always go forward with, is whenever we're doing something, whatever it is, a business, a project, creating art, what can go wrong? Because sometimes you're taking from resources from other people, you're taking time, you're taking from the planet. How, as we learn what could go wrong, okay, those things could go wrong. So we've got to build in mitigation. We've got to build in already, because by the time you've gone too far down the line and you're making a nice, healthy profit, you've got your shareholders and your salespeople who are going, no, you can't go back. That's why we come across so much greenwashing, because I know the soul of many companies would like to do stuff, but they've got a bottom line and they're too far down the line.
Exactly. And, that's all what Ecosystemic is about. We believe that now we have the technical capacity and the knowledge to see the impact of our actions upfront, maybe 50 years, 100 years in the future, and take the actions today to prevent these negative impacts in the future. So amen to that. But you told me that you came from business background. What was your aha moment? Like, did you switch from overnight thinking now need to give back to society, or is there any event in your life that told you that you need to start taking action and not be a passive spectator of what's going on?
I've never been a passive. I've always been I'm a defender of the underdog. And someone asked me once why fishes, and I said because they don't have a voice. Our duty, our stewardship of the planet, is to protect those who don't. There was a book that actually I met him again on Tuesday, Charles Clover. And he is the person who wrote a book called The End of the Line. There was a film made about it as well. I read that book, and that was it. It was the day I gave up fish. I don't eat fish anymore. And I actually realized that there is no fish on this planet that dies an honorable death, or they're very, very, very few. And that was kind of like, my God, this is so crazy. We've got to start making changes, because it's actually bad stewardship. And again, as a business, if I were running my fishing industry the way that it is run today, every CEO should be fired and never be allowed to be a CEO again, as far as I'm concerned. So that was the my conclusion, and that's what I'm working towards: is how can we make changes for good in that direction. It's a very difficult one. It's what we call a wicked problem.
You are the co-founder of Gallifrey Foundation.
Do you know what Gallifrey is?
Not at all.
So it's when we named it, it was way back when. So if you've ever heard of a television series called Doctor Who.
Sure.
It's his home planet. And he is
Okay.
always and he's always fighting baddies or people who are trying to threaten the planet, and he's trying to protect people and the planet. And the other point about it is that when the Doctor regenerates, the actor changes, there's someone else who can step in, and that was part of our philosophy. It's not about us. We don't need to be the ones. We build, operate, transfer. So a lot of our projects will become, our aim is to get them self-funding and basically on their own, so that we don't need, it's not about us, as I say, it's about what's the systemic change that needs to happen. That's quite a tall order. That's a difficult one. We've struggled with it, but we're learning as we go.
Yeah, shame on me. Like, how could I miss this? Like, my co-founder is a big fan of Doctor Who, and I do too. But I was thinking of something sea related, science related. So,
We've got it all.
Yeah, that's a very nice and clever reference. And what are the actions of the Gallifrey Foundation?
Okay, so that is an interesting one. We basically we're a bit of everything. We were described as a mouse that doesn't just squeak, it grunts, it oinks, it snorts, it does hisses, it does what's necessary. So I'll just give you a few examples. Let's take some plastics. Okay. So at the time when we first got involved, most of the world had not really caught on to the plastic pollution issue. Scientists were talking about it, start of civil society. So we worked closely with a group called the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, based here in Switzerland. And they are basically the mother organization. They actually spawned the WWF that we know, but then they have more of a policy, political. They've got a seat at the United Nations as an observer. They've got more governmental and political standing, but they're also a network of thousands of scientists. So we worked with them to basically take the story of plastic and start. So everyone was talking about the environmental issues. Then the next thing became, yes, but it's got health issues. Did you know that plastics, to make them soft, hard, squishy, they have different chemicals in them? And what we didn't know at the time is that those chemicals actually are affecting us. And people say to me, yeah, but why wasn't that noticed before? Well, the difference is that because these chemicals mimic our hormones. So that's a very different delivery mechanism. So if I go into a room full of gas and I'm overexposed to it, I'm going to get sick. But this is not that case. This is that if I am touching a glass or it's a plastic cup, it's going in through my fingers, and that's called microdose exposure. So we are constantly exposed to it, and that leads to cancers, neurodegenerative conditions, infertility, reproductive problems. It's actually it's growing more and more serious. And in the same way that you're hearing microplastics are in virtually every part of our body, they are also carrying or conveying a lot of these chemicals. So my job is not actually working downstream to protect fishes, but in order to do that, I have to go upstream to make sure that I am creating the conditions that will actually bring in a treaty that will address the amount of plastics that we are producing, because 40% of all our plastics produced are single use, meaning that you use them for literally the journey of a coffee cup, the straw, a takeaway meal. So the point is that those are just piling up, and we recycle. And when we say recycle, you can actually say properly recycle 1% of them. So think about that. That's like filling a room up with plastic, more and more and more and more and more. There's a finite point. And so that's part of what we do. We helped IUCN. We contributed to a report that they produced on microplastics in the ocean. It was quite seminal at the time. Things have moved on. So that would be one area. Another area that we work on is tangential legal action, where we'll do some kind of off the wall things like we sued a country once and we told them, stop fishing immediately. And that was at the Supreme Court, and that created ripples. Now, obviously, I'm going to say movie spoiler, we didn't win the case, but the effect, the impact meant that that country ended up with more patrol boats to stop illegal fishing in their waters. They ended up with 5 instead of 1. They ended up with better marine policies. They protected the fish that was being targeted. And more than that, because we used that as a vehicle, not just to cite that country, we also mentioned other countries who were baddies on the ocean, and they changed behaviors as well. So what we do is that's a proof of concept. So that's a very tangential legal action. That's one thing. Another one might be scientific research. We created for plastics, plastic-free campus, which we're working with an American university in order to develop that for universities globally. How do you get your campus to go plastic-free? And that is not the point about that. Even at the time, was this is not just about the environment. This is about your health. This is about social justice, because inevitably our plastics end up being exported to global South countries where they're accused of being the ones that are the biggest polluting rivers, which is because we sent a lot of the plastic there. So that it's nuanced. I hate to say it's all this and all that, but that's kind of the grosso modo. We believe, I work also with a group of sharktivists trying to protect sharks. 100 million sharks killed each year. So that's pretty bad. So those are just a few. I could go on. How much time have you got?
You have all the time in the world, because your actions are important. And you are somehow challenging also my views, because I was thinking that the upstream actions are or could be useless. And changing policies for me was, okay, I would change policy, but then we have the business interest that will fight back and lower the amplitude of our action and turn it into a small makeup, or like a duct tape policy. So maybe like downstream actions are more important. I see that I'm wrong, and well, it happens. But can you dive deeper into this, like how, at your level, for example,
Yes.
suing a country, this kind of disturbance or noise effect on a country that doesn't want to have spotlight on for bad behaviors, force the country to change?
Okay, so this is where this has been what I have learned throughout this last decade or more, is it's very easy to be a campaigner. Let's go out in the streets and protest. Okay, people say, yeah, I'm going out and protesting. What does that do? Actually, it does a lot. It draws attention to an issue. It shows that there is a multitude of people and that they all feel strongly about this. That helps policymakers, because if I am a policymaker and I'm elected, and this happens in reality, many people who are keen for social justice over the environment, they get elected and they go in and they say, I want to make these changes. And the people around them are going, well, you can't because you don't have money. You don't have, there's who apart from you wants to do this? You need to give policymakers either the data or the will of the people, so that they can say, but I've got all of this behind me that's showing that we do need to do this. I've got scientific data, and I've got polls, and I've got petitions. So that's another part. The other part is that it also helps for the people who are uncomfortable. If you keep petitioning them or whatever, eventually they'll go, oh, to hell with it. Yeah, it's not a big deal. And they'll get off the pot. So, sometimes it's a little bit of what I call mosquito management. If, you can try and yell at someone through a window, but put a mosquito in the room and start bzzz, and eventually they'll go, oh, to hell with it, I'm out. Because they'll weigh the pain of being bombarded all the time or not. So that's another way. The other point of it is we have to bring in the science. And my other problem, and it's not a problem, I love scientists, but they're very, very precise, very narrow things. And we know this story with tobacco. All the scientists could see that tobacco was bad for us, but it took them a long, 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 long time to say tobacco is bad for us. And the point is because they want to be absolutely certain. And the way that science works is you need to have replicability, you need to have peer reviews, you need to keep trying that, you need to see over time. So all of that it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because you want them to move faster. So then you become the communicator in between interpreting that data and saying things that a scientist may not say, but you can see where the data is going. And in my case, I often say, how much data do we need? Because the pushback from some governments often is, oh, well, we need more data. That can also be a signal of, let's just keep delaying this and kicking it down the road. So you have to know who your policymaker is to know if this is genuine or if this is just bullshit. So that's kind of where we're at. So you have the policymakers, you have the scientists, you have the activists, then you have the lawyers. And that is, and enforcers. So law and enforcement are very important. And unfortunately, the ocean, of which, by the way, just a fun fact, ocean planet, what color do you think of when I say sustainability?
Blue.
Oh, come on. You were going to say green.
No, because I you know, I was talking about this like a week ago with my co-founder, and we were talking about like, okay, we overuse the color green to represent ecology and nature, etc., where in fact, like,
thank you.
our planet is mainly made of water, and it was over a logo color, etc. I would thought like, okay, like when we think of, okay, like nice weather, clean weather, we think of like blue sky, blue ocean, etc. It should be blue.
Thank you. Well, you've just actually said my point. But the fun fact is the planet is covered in 70% water, and we comprise
Exactly.
70% water. So we're kind of like the world within ourselves as well. And I think that the important thing to realize is the ocean is so big that what goes on out there is very hard to track. And nowadays we have satellites, we can track boats and everything. But I've often said that's like watching a murder on videotape. You can't get someone there quickly. So thankfully, technology, AI can track. They can track boats even if they switch off their tracker systems. They know who they are now. So we're starting to get much smarter. But up until literally 10 years ago, what was going on at sea was happening, and there was not much we could do. You had observers on board fishing boats that literally the least welcome person on a boat. And it was dangerous for them. So there are lots of conditions. So what we try and do is look at it and go, okay, how can we make that enforcement easier? So obviously satellite tracking is an important one, but then afterwards it is, how do we penalize people? Because it's very easy to get away with a lot of crimes. And if you think about it, 100 million sharks being killed every year means that there's a lot going on that should not be. We have lost 2/3 of all shark species, or they're on not lost, but they're on threatened and near threatened and highly threatened. So that's in the last 50 years. And the thing that we forget, sharks don't reproduce like fish do. They come to sexual maturity much later in life, 5, 7, 20, 30 years, and they don't produce masses of fish roe. They produce pups or eggs, or eggs and pups in the body. I mean, it's a complicated being a shark. But the point is they don't reproduce a lot, and we're taking out more than we can. That is an externality, because an ocean without sharks, who are like the lions, the scavengers of the Serengeti, like hyenas are, or whatever. That's what sharks do. They keep the ocean healthy, and they chase fishes in certain directions at certain times. They need to be there. So by losing them, we're losing the Jenga puzzle of the ocean health ecosystem. So that's where we need enforcers, and then you need laws, because an enforcement needs to have a law to go against it. So that's the other part that we're working with. We're working also on more tangential things like rights of the ocean. Like you have rights of nature. They protected a river in a forest in Ecuador, a river in New Zealand. Whales now have rights. That means in court they can be represented and be protected. Because today, if I were to steal your watch, I'd go to jail. Okay. If I were to raze down a forest, particularly now, there's no consequence. But that is killing a huge amount of biodiversity that's taken centuries to build up. It's so finely calibrated, and as humans we think, oh, let's forest, but we're not thinking about the loss of shelter, of carbon dioxide sequestration, of oxygen, of fungal, the microsomal root system, all the insects, the tiny insects that live there, the fruits, the rotting. All of that is a huge system that's so important. The same thing is happening in the ocean with bottom trawling.
And do you think that sharks are somehow victim of their lack of sympathy? They always play like the villain role in movies, cartoons, etc. So people may care less about sharks.
I'm going to put that squarely on Steven Spielberg. It's his fault. It's not Robert Benchley. He wrote the book. He realized what he'd done. He spent the rest of his life trying to fix that. Steven Spielberg, we've written to him. He never replied. And I actually think his movie, if he had a preamble or something that this is fictional or whatever, it would have been better. I have swum with sharks. I'm going to be swimming with sharks again this year. It's like everything. When you understand the behavior, if you go to a dog, okay. No, if you go to a cat and you pull its tail, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, you can expect.
Okay, same thing. We go into the water, we go into their homes, and we think that they are villains and everything. I have swum very closely with sharks. I'm not going to sit there and say I'm not putting myself in a dangerous environment, but I treat that environment with respect. I don't go in and just think, just because I'm here, I'm going to be safe. It's not. Go in a pool if you want to be safe. This is their home. This is their environment. And there are certain behaviors that you can use. And in fact, one of the interesting things is there was a surfer who used to slap the water to get energized before surfing. That's exactly prey behavior. And that was why a shark came and bit their limb off. So those are the things we need to understand. We don't know enough. We think that we know, but we don't. So I think with sharks, there are 4 reasons why sharks are killed. They're killed, first of all, for shark fin soup. And I will, a myth buster here, this is not China, who is the biggest consumer. The Chinese government have banned shark fin soup from all official banquets. They did that 2013, and shark fin soup dropped 80% in China. It's actually around it, other countries. Hong Kong is still the major trader, which is a problem, and that's a systemic key that we'd love to help resolve. They are killed for squalene. That is the liver, their livers. They have an oil that's used in many beauty and makeup products and in some medicines. There are plant-based alternatives that are absolutely 100% equivalent effectiveness. So why are we doing that? Oh, because it's free. And then squalamine is another thing that is also used for joints, and then shark meat. Now, shark meat is a kind of, this is again an externality. A number of years ago, in order to stop shark finning at sea, where they'd slice off the fins off a shark and then throw it in the water alive, The idea was if you land a shark, you must take it to land and you can fin it there. So what do? You end up with this big, bulky creature, sometimes a number of meters long, can be a whale shark, and you bring it on land, you cut off the fins, you send them off to be sold. But what do you do with the shark meat? Well, it was pet food to start with. Then it's being exported to Brazil for school food for children. And you need to know that as apex predators in the ocean, along with all the carnivores, including salmon and cod and whales and sharks, they bioaccumulate a lot of the chemicals that were in the plastics in the water and all the other things that are in the water. So it's really not healthy either. So, it layers up. It's never just like, oh, it's that and that and that and that. And why I always ask people, always think where connect your next dot. What's the next thing? You told me, if I about energy, you said it's people think you switch on and off the light and it's just there. Same thing, you go to a supermarket and you open the freezer and there's the meat, there's the fish. Where does that come from? Go back, go find out where it came from, because I can assure you the story is not pretty unless you fished it yourself.
It's time for a little self-promotion and introducing our new product. So, this show was brought to you by Zero, the last portable battery you will ever need. Zero is not only sustainable and repairable with no tools, it's also modular to fit your needs and your way of consuming energy. With Zero, you can add a flashlight, a tripod, more outputs, you name it. We have 20 plus add-ons and 20 plus color combinations. You can have it in all white, wood, glow in dark, or any other color to fit your personality and what you would like to have as a battery. Zero is not only a portable battery, it's a movement. By supporting Zero, you support your right for a more sustainable and responsible tech with repairable designs and products that are built to last, as they are meant to be. To support us and get yours, you can go on nomorezero.com or go.nomorezero.com if you want to know more about the product. Don't forget, go.nomorezero.com.
Exactly. And during my my research on your activities, I stumbled upon the term venture philanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I run in the startup. I know like venture capital, and I know what philanthropy means, but like the mixing both looks odd to me. Can you like clarify what's venture philanthropy?
So venture philanthropy is basically, so to put it very simply, it's our time, our treasure, our talent, okay? But we use that in a specific way. It's again to make these systemic changes. So as I told you earlier, we start by mapping, okay? Who's doing what? Then we look and we try and create the spaces. So for instance, say we see two organizations doing very much the same thing. We'll try and bring them together to work. So everyone who's working on sharks, we're trying to bring them together so we can exchange ideas. What's going on here? What's going on there? What is the twist? What's the thing that we haven't done before? Or why is it not working? That's the bottom line. Or we don't reinvent the wheel. So if we see someone is doing something, we'll, ask around, is anyone doing this? Yeah, and they're doing a good job of it. We don't need to be there because we know that it's being handled and being done. If we can contribute in any way, of course. We look for gaps, and that's part of this. When you're mapping things, we see things that are coming up the horizon that other groups have not. So just to give you an example, back to that report we did with the IUCN on microplastics in the ocean, it came out with this lovely chart that showed that 36% of all microplastics in the ocean were textiles. So literally, I think so many organizations started focusing on plastic clothing, nylon, all the variations that there were. What are we going to do? We're going to take, so it became the big thing. The point is that the second largest amount were tires. So just a fun fact about this, when tires abrade on the road, they release microplastics. It was 28% at the time. By the way, that figure has changed. It's increased massively, and I'll tell you why. So those, add that and road markings, and you were at 36%. So we said, okay, is anyone dealing with this? And no, everyone was dealing with something else. So we said, okay, fine. Do you mind if we start? So we started working, and we looked at developing a standard for tire abrasion, because that didn't exist. And the reason why we thought of that is because you can't fix what you can't measure. We encountered quite a bit of opposition from the people who make tires. And that was a very interesting experience. But at the end of it all, we moved it along, but we had to step back because we could not get enough groups to work with us. Thankfully, it's been taken on, and it is now it's hit its time. But the thing I want to say about this is that when we talk, I'm all for the green transition. I'm all for renewable energy. But the one thing that has happened with electric vehicles is that because of the car batteries, they're up to 1.5 times heavier. And that means the rate of tire abrasion is literally so before you would change your tires 3 to 4 times a year, with an electric vehicle, it's likely 2 to 3 times a year. And of course, the tire manufacturer said that's a model they could get on board with. So we had a bit of trouble with that. So I'm just sort of showing you that was an area that we took. And then we do an exercise at the end of every year, which is called Murder Your Darlings, which is, of all the things that we're doing, what's working? Where are we getting traction? And where are we not? Are we just spinning? And if we think it's spinning and we really don't think it's we personally can make a change or have created enough of that energy for something to happen, then we stop it. And that's what we did with the Tire project. So that just shows you that. And then the final thing that we do is we look at the infrastructure. So one of the things we also did is look at a mangrove project. So, of course, everyone is planting mangroves and trees by the thousands or whatever. The reality is that it's much more complex than that. Like nature is, it's full of biodiversity. And so we realized that actually in order for a mangrove project, to receive its money at the end, it was such a complicated process that for every dollar that was being given, they were receiving 30 cents, if at all. So we did a whole study of that, and we said, how can we do this in such a way that we democratize the process? And now we've developed something called Fair Carbon. And that is a process where projects around the world can self-identify to ensure that they have the enabling conditions, the correct conditions before even starting, before spending a penny. And if they want to do it, then they know what they have to do to get to that launch. Then we hold their hand up until a certain level, and then we put them through an accelerator, which is a fund that's renewable, and we're trying to get more people to join into that, which is then it launches them into actual project ready, and they can start getting their money. So that is kind of the way that we work, and that's become Fair Carbon. It's spun off from us. We don't need it anymore. We want it to be independent. The other thing I would add is I started something called She Changes Climate, which was when dear Boris Johnson, as COP26 in Glasgow, chose 12 men to be part of the high-level team. Similar situations that are going on right now. But there's a value loss. If we don't have different perspectives, if we don't have that value add, what did Einstein say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, probably why we're at COP30 now. And we need more women, or we need more perspectives. That's what I'm saying. And it is very different. And it's not just, I'm not the woman. It needs to be someone who's been frontline in Africa or in Asia, or who have actually experienced that. Those are the voices who will be able to say what you're talking about is rubbish, or we've got solutions. And we need that perspective. But if everyone's saying the same thing and echo chambering, then we're not getting anywhere. And that taught me as well that whatever we do, even when you sometimes encounter things that are maddening, we try and apply a level of compassion and understanding about intersectional environmentalism, because they are so intrinsically involved.
I'm not a big fan of forcing quotas. And let me explain. Like after my dad passed away, all my family now is composed of women. Like I have only daughters, only sisters, etc. And my whole life was to empower them and tell them, like, for example, my daughter wanted to play soccer, like football, and she told me, like, but this is like a boys' sport. And I told her, like, who told you that this is a boys' sport?
Have you seen? There's a wonderful video about kids, okay, who are asked to do a task, boys and girls. They must be about 6 or 7, and they rush off and they go do it, and they're working. They've got to put so many balls in something and then run back. And at the end, the person who's running the experiment gives the boys 10 sweets and gives the girl 3 sweets.
Okay.
And you see their reactions. The girls look, and then they look at the boys and go, and they don't say anything. And then they say, well, that's what's happening. What would you do? And the boys absolutely spontaneously start giving their sweets to the girls. And even in some cases gave more because they felt that they'd done more. And it's kind of like, this is a social construct. We are creating this. We can uncreate it. And I think that's one of the big things that I am very passionate about, is don't think in a rut. Step out of it. If you're on the train track, you're only going to think that way. Sometimes you've got to say, I'm going to step out of this. I'm not going to do what the regular thinking is. Try something different. And it's actually quite invigorating and refreshing.
What's your tangible action? Is it about like forcing quotas or not, and how? Because I'm very uncomfortable with like forcing quotas for the sake of having quotas. But then again, I recognize that it's very important to have women voices and diverse point of view in a debate that concerns us all. Like after all, like as you say, 12 like a board composed of 12 men as like expert and representative, when climate is our business as a planet and not only like the men's business. How do you see that, and how do you think that do it without facing this criticism? Oh, quotas again.
Yeah, I think, in fact, even Christine Lagarde had said that we should do it at the beginning, because the point is, and I'll give you my best analogy. I'll do it with if I like a gin and tonic, okay? If I just gave you the tonic and I put a drop in of gin, would you taste the gin?
No.
Okay. How much gin do you need to taste a gin and tonic?
Well, depend on how much tonic you have in the glass.
But good point. But I'm trying to say we need to bring in more to create a different flavor. And that's not going to happen. And we've seen it, that when you leave it to the social, it's basically inherent bias without even knowing it. Boris Johnson choosing 12 men never even thought about this, because it does not cross his mind. So the point is, I often talk about a carbon bias. Okay, sometimes we have a carbon lens and we're only looking at that, but there are externalities around, and we need to bring those in. We have to consider those, because finding a carbon solution doesn't necessarily, it may negatively impact biodiversity, it may negatively impact social justice, so we have to think. And that is not our nature. As humans, and particularly in this day, it's a slam dunk, quick solution. Let's do this. But sometimes the considered approach of how we're going to do this with thought, and I mean with thought, requires looking at what are the different perspectives, what are the different things different views that will help me come out with a more robust decision. And that is what is always missing. And we see it again and again. I'm a woman, so I've experienced it. And I always laugh because when I'm on LinkedIn, it's usually white cisgender men who are always the ones making the comment. I said, if you were a woman of color from the global south, I'd listen. But I'm not. I'm not going to, because she never gets a chance, or she doesn't get a chance. So I think at the end, I had to learn a lot. When we started She Changes Climate, here I am, a middle-aged, middle-class woman. I'm not the voice. I haven't had a lived experience. And that's what it boils down to, lived experiences. If we know what those are rich. Those are value add. And also, I think even McKinsey came out with a report that boards with women on them, and more women, usually are up to 5% more profitable. I mean, if you're going to talk about economics, well, there you go.
I was not expecting, I was putting like plastic bags at the top, like number one, plastic bags, and maybe number two, I don't know, like plastic straws or something. And then you say, no, it's textile and tires. And yeah, that was like a revelation. And that's why I love doing this podcast, because in like 1 hour, I learn years and years and years of data in 1 hour. Why textile? Like, is it like the manufacturing process, the afterlife? What's the problem with textile?
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to, there are a few nuances there. When you talk about a plastic bag and a straw, those are actually considered macroplastics because they haven't broken down. A microplastic is 5 millimeters or less. And now you'll be hearing about nanoplastics because they've been discovered in the blood-brain barrier. They've gone through the fetus. They're basically everywhere. So that's the first point. The second point is, further research, because that report was done in 2017. About 2 years ago, they did another report, and it was blown away by paints. So if we look around us, even behind my background, yours, you've got paint on your wall. You'd think it's the most obvious. And the problem is that they're exposed to the elements on the outside, wind, rain, heat, cold, and they become microplastics like that. But going to your point about textiles, the problem is, and I suppose you do hear the talk about degrowth. The reason why it is because a lot of our consumption right now is not driven by, I need this, it's I want this, and it's easy. You can click, 3 clicks, and the algorithms, the whole process is designed to make you shop more. So that's one thing. Purchasing, more money circulating. Obviously, I understand that. The second point is that obviously, as you're trying to cater to that, you need a material that is cheap. Guess what? Plastics are made from fossil fuels. They're made from coal, from gas, and from petroleum. So there you are. And that's subsidized to the tune of 17 trillion annually. So that's why it's cheap. Remove the subsidies, and suddenly you'd have a level playing field. So that's the first part. The second part is that textiles, when you want something that's cheap, then you can make it throwaway. And then what do you do with it? Because as we know, plastics do not degrade in the environment. Hemp, linen, cotton, literally within 100 years, they've degraded. But plastics will not. And funnily enough, you remember that huge fire in Paradise in California a few years ago? There was a picture of a house that had burnt down, and there was one cupboard in it. And the person had these these shirts that you wear that you don't have to iron. They were untouched. So you're like, Okay, what kind of chemicals are on that? Because there you also have PFAS, which are these forever chemicals. So it was like, oh my God. So for my job is I'm learning all the time. It's like Mario, Super Mario, the little explosions everywhere. It's like, oh my God, there's this. Oh my God, there's that. Oh my gosh. But then you keep going, okay, fine. How are we going to mitigate that? How are we going to deal with that? So at the moment, you'll see there's a lot of campaigning about cheap clothing, because most of it now is ending up in the Atacama Desert in Chile, I think it is, and also in Ghana along the coast, which is awful. They're just dumping hundreds of tons of clothes because they don't know what to do with it. So it goes down to countries that, you know, will receive it, but it's because Europe or the Western world doesn't want to deal with that. It's throwing. When I was a kid, if I threw my toys into my sister's room because I didn't feel like tidying them up, my mum would give me a bollocking. You need to do that.
And you say that the number two source was Tire Abrasion. We did another episode about cars and cars pollution, not released yet. And I was also surprised that tires abrasion is the number one source of pollution for a car. Disregarding the energy source, like diesel car or electric car, tires abrasion pollute more than the engine.
Well, nowadays the technology for engines is so much better. You have catalyzers; they collect a lot, but particularly with an EV, obviously there are no emissions, so therefore. Of course, it's that. And the interesting thing about tire pollution is that is what we breathe in. It uses a highly carcinogenic, I can't say it, sorry, carcinogenic compound. And in fact, also we discovered a few years ago that for coho salmon, there was a special anti-UV chemical that was used, 6-ppd, and when it's exposed to light, to UV light, and that washes off into the streams, it is immediately toxic to spawning salmon. That was actually it was a horrible thing to happen, but at the same time, it was a big wake up call, because if it's happening there, where else is it happening in the world? The ocean, there's a lot going on, and we haven't only even spoken about what's going on in the ocean. We've only spoken about what's going on upstream.
Yeah. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about what's going on in the ocean.
So let's go back to the very beginning of our talk. Ocean, the movie by David Attenborough, which I'm not an ambassador of, but oh my gosh. So this is the first time, David Attenborough.
Yep.
Okay. And he's done the Life on Earth, Blue Planet, Frozen Planet, all these series. And the thing about David, he's very measured. He talks about things. This is the first time he's talking about the horrors that are going on. He speaks specifically about bottom trawling. So bottom trawling, I was in this theater and 4 people turned around and said, I had no idea this is how it happens. So basically, you throw down into the bottom of the ocean a big weighted kind of rod with rollers on it, and then the net behind it, and you drag this across the bottom of the ocean. Now, imagine that you had I don't know, imagine Central Park. I came in with a huge bulldozer and I just tore it all up because I wanted to get an acorn or something like that. That's basically what is happening. What is interesting, he was saying, this is happening all over the world. You can actually see by satellite the trails of plumes that come out. Bottom trawling releases more CO2 emissions than Germany annually, or aviation. So again, we're churning up sediment and everything, killing everything. And once these fish are dragged up and put onto the boat, you as a fishing vessel, you have a target species. So you may be going out to get, I don't know what you'll be getting nowadays because they're virtually all gone. But if you were getting cod, you keep the cod and you throw everything back in the water. Well, the way that they've been drawn up, they're dead. So let me give you the fun fact. We remove from the ocean annually fishes to the weighing the population of China each year, and we discard up to half of it before we even land it. That is awful. That is just absolutely unacceptable in my view. And that's bottom trawling. That is basically gill net, purse seining, where you have a net about the size of 3 747s and you just drag whatever's in. And of course, bringing them up from the depths means that many fishes that live below in benthic areas, they turn inside out. So the famous blobfish, have you heard of the blobfish? Okay, it's a beautiful fish down at 3,000 meters, but when it turns virtually inside out when it comes up because of the pressure. So these are the things that we're doing. We're killing indiscriminately, and we are not. A farmer will plow the field, take the crop, but they'll plant again. We don't do that. And then even worse now, we are, if you'll see a lot of squid in all the sushi bars everywhere. We're looking at krill, because those are basically, we're coming down to the last few major fish populations that we have. So this is serious. And so what he says at the end is we have subsidized bad fishing practices, which we need to get rid of the subsidies. We need to improve the way that we fish. In fact, and people also need to think about where their fish comes from. It doesn't mean to say we can't have fish, but just think very carefully. Is it in season? Is it local? How was it caught? Was it caught by bottom trawling? Those are questions are worth asking in a restaurant, at the supermarket. Just keep pushing it, because that progress that goes back. That goes up. They start hearing, oh, so and so is asking about this, and if they start hearing that, they do feel that they might have to react. So that's one part of it. The other part that Sir David Attenborough talks about is the power of marine protected areas. So in areas like in Hawaii, Papahanaumokuakea, which is this huge reserve on the islands of Hawaii, it is just thriving with life. And the way that we measure that is fascinating. It's by sound. So clownfish, Nemo, Finding Nemo? Okay. When you have a baby Nemo, they have to go somewhere else. They can't stay on their little coral. So they do it by listening to the vibrancy of another coral. And when they see it's noisy, it means that it's got lots of life and shrimp and polyps or whatever. It goes there. So it's we're learning so much about the ocean, and how it needs to be protected. And then finally, just the bigger picture, which is something that not all of us can do something about, or I can't directly, but everyone can, is the power of the ocean to absorb our excess human generated heat. So at the moment, because of our greenhouse gas emissions and that heat, the ocean is absorbing up to 90% of it per second. Okay. It's the equivalent heat energy of 8 Hiroshima bombs exploding per second. Okay. Now think that when I started saying this, it used to be 5, and then it's 6, and it's 7, and it's gone up to 8 now. How much longer can it do that? And then what happens when it can't?
Well, I assume not for so long, and and I also assume that it will have like a dramatic impact on the marine life. Some years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, I've been to Cabo Verde, and I went with an NGO that is working in turtle preservation. And they explained to me that the gender of the baby turtle is defined by the temperature, like the heat. And if the water or the sand is hot, the egg will be a male, and if it's cold and normal, it will be a female. And as a problem with these
overheating of both like sea and sand, we have now in the sea turtle population more male than female, leading to the decrease of the population and probably the extinction of the species in the upcoming years. So it's not just about like, and then that was my aha moment regarding like sea and ocean conservation. And I realized that I would never expect temperature to affect the population of a species leading to the extinction. So it was not just about polluting directly, but even our indirect action has like dramatic consequences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think in the end, so someone says to me, well, what can I do? And I've always said, my analogy is we are drops in the ocean, but as drops, we make an ocean. We can all do something. And it may be, I mean, the simple thing would be consider how much fish intake you take. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be a sushi habit all the time. Make it an occasion. Think about honor that creature. And that's whether you're eating meat or fish or any living thing. Just honor it and say, okay, this is a rare occasion. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make an event out of it. Think about your voice. That's also something that's very important. If you can sign petitions, if you can. I always say, well, I hate signing petitions, but I can promise you every morning I sign 2 a day. It's kind of like in the morning, okay, what's come in, sign it, because I know that those are adding up to a number. That number makes a difference, and it has helped. We in the UK we banned the carriage of shark fins. So now they cannot be imported or exported. We're working on that in Europe. There was a citizens initiative, which was about the 3rd time it had ever been done. Again, it's important. You may not think it, but it does. It does. Your wallet, what you choose to purchase, and that you say why I am not purchasing it or why I am. And sometimes it's, the poor guy who's sorting out, at the fish counter, he doesn't know or she doesn't know. You can just say, by the way, you just need to know that I'm not going to buy this because this is actually, farmed salmon from an aquaculture that's not very thing. I just thought I'd let you know, but I'm going to take this instead. So you don't make them feel shitty about themselves, but you pass on the information so they'll go, wow, and think about it. It's how can we do this in a way that's not judgmental, because that's not going to help anyone. We're helping everyone on this planet. That's what we're trying to do.
I'll play like the devil's advocate here and say that your distractors may say, oh, we need mass fishing to feed the world. I don't have data, so
Yeah.
I was told this. I have nothing to say. I would say, oh, I need to do some research, and I think you may have more to say about this.
I think in the end, you have to understand. So in the environmental world, we value a creature as its value to the ecosystem. So what was it? David Attenborough has said that we have extracted 2.7 gigatons of the biomass of the ocean.
Okay.
That's extracted. It hasn't been replaced. It's been extracted. Up until 2024, that's the figure. So think about that. How can we be so cavalier with the way that we extract from the... I'm not saying... In the Maldives, you have boats that go out with about 40 fishers, and they have long, fishing rods, and they throw them in the water. They catch a tuna. They land it. If it's the right size, it stays. If it's a juvenile, it's straight off back into the water. No harm done. That's a fisherman in Maine. He's going to go out. He's going to see a beautiful old lobster. He'll realize that she's old. Put her back in the water. But if you're bottom trawling, by the time she's come up, with eggs or not, it's dead.
Exactly.
You've killed it. We are killing our golden goose. So all we ask is not that there's not fishing, but that it is done in a far more sustainable manner. And to do that, we have to stop bottom trawling. There's no methodology that can happen where it's done with care.
Yep. And can we have maybe it already exists, like numbers on how much are we fishing versus how much fish or meat ends up in the market. Meaning, like, what's the proportion?
So that's basically what I was trying to say. I'm not going, because the figures change each year. We did that study about the weight of the population of China about 2 years ago. But basically, it is the weight of if you take an average person, their weight, you take the population of China, you multiply that, you look at the figures that were of all fish that were extracted, and then you look at what's landed.
Okay. And fish farming or fishing?
Okay, I am open net fish farming is incredibly damaging to the environment. It's literally like, imagine that you lived next to a coal belching plant and you had to live there. That is what salmon open aquaculture does. Plus, there are boats right in fact, this shows in the movie Ocean. There are boats in the Antarctic, literally scooping up, vacuuming up krill. Now, there are species of penguin, seals, and whales that live solely on krill. They come there to winter in order to feed before they go to tropical waters to birth for the whales, and then the penguins go off. They're now starting to be impacted, and krill are a cold water creature. So as temperatures get warmer, there's less and less krill, and they're finding them in places that, so a penguin has to travel further and further away to find food to come back, if it comes back. And now we've got competition. Why is that krill being taken? To be ground up to feed salmon, which is gray when it's farmed. It's gray flesh, not pink, to dye it pink. I'm sorry. Again, where's the justification in that? I'd rather have gray salmon if I was going to do that, and I'm not going to do that either. But the point is that this is all marketing. This is all the wrong drivers for stewardship of the ocean. So I would, if I do, my daughter eats salmon, and I wait till Pacific salmon is in season, and then I buy it, and I make sure that I find out how it was caught, and then I freeze it and then use it for, however, she doesn't have it that often, but she's got it just in case.
So now you are blaming marketing for, and
Yeah, I was a marketer. And then I went, hang on. Originally, marketing was to tell you about a product to buy it. Now it's much more sinister than that. It's actually behavioral change for bad in a lot of cases. And I don't like that, which is why I left marketing. So I stood by my words.
I fully agree with you. And we see it even in our field, in the energy sector, where, let's say, the customer's education is not heading toward like good behavior, but toward like more consumerism. Like, for example, like when you see ads on fast charging decays batteries faster, and okay, you save time. Like instantly, you are saving time because your smartphone is charging in 5 minutes. But the reality behind it is that your smartphone will be replaced in 2 years instead of 4 or 5. And go ahead.
I have a Fairphone. I can change my battery.
Oh, good for you.
I am always finding new ways. Sorry, I'm your guinea pig.
And so let's get back to like fish farming. And I fully agree with you when you say that the right solution will be to avoid mass fishing, and us as customers, or we vote with our wallet, so we can decide to eat salmon on season, eat less, etc., etc. But I see it very hard to change billions of people behavior
Okay.
to do the
I
shift?
see what you're saying, and that is exactly. But this is where you have different drivers. Why did I give up fish? Because I read a book and it changed my life. That's not going to be the same for someone else, and you don't expect everyone to. But and think about coastal communities that depended on fish. So the problem is, and this is a really interesting issue where you connect the dots. I lived in West Africa. I used to watch every Sunday. They go out in these dugout boats, canoes, go through the waves, go out, be there all day, come back with nets full of fish. Now, and there was no plastic pollution on the beach. If I got a tar ball in my hair, that was the worst thing that could happen because they were, anyway, a different story. Nowadays, they go out. In the distance are these factory fishing vessels from Europe, okay, and from China, and they are sucking up everything. That means that when they go out, they bring back nothing. Originally, in West Africa, fish was your main diet on coastal communities, and you'd sell it, you'd feed your family, and you'd sell it to the market, and that was a sustainable business. Then they've got less and less to sell. By the way, the fishing vessels are subsidized to the tune of 30 billion annually, which means that if I am a big fishing vessel from China, Taiwan, Japan, Europe, I think I can't remember where else, but they're basically 10 nations fishing for 90% of the fish. They're subsidized. That if they didn't have those subsidies, they would be broke. So our taxpayer money is paying them to fish to make money that we then pay for again. I love it. It's a double whammy. The fisherman from Africa sees this and goes, I've lost my job because the only thing I'm bringing is plastic. So they take a treacherous journey all the way Africa up to Morocco. They try and cross the Mediterranean. They'll probably get killed in a dinghy, or they'll get over. They're treated like vermin. And then they're sent to Libya to these awful prisons, all because we in Europe paid for that. But no one makes that connection. And it's just heartbreaking that we're not being responsible for our fellow citizens and our planet. This is irresponsible behavior. And so, if there's a buck to be made by a mega corporation, somehow or another they get round it. And as you talked about greenwashing, we have a lot of blue washing, and it's our job as citizens and as civil society organizations to call that out. We're not liked much, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do.
And yeah, especially that, you know, now you are connecting the dots and you see that like mass fishing impacts marine life indeed, but has like an impact that goes beyond, when people now, like especially in Europe or even in the US, people are complaining of like, oh, immigration, mass immigration, etc. At the end, it's all connected and it's like a full loop, and we need to break the weakest point in the cycle. And when it comes to fishing, like the weakest point in the cycle is not using our taxes to subsidize mass fishing, and that's it.
Yes. You would actually have people staying in their homes, being able to feed themselves. But right now, that's not an option. So, yes, you're absolutely right. So, if you want to stop immigration, solve climate change, solve fishing.
Are you seeing some improvement? Well, it's your life journey to make a change, but are you seeing this working right now, or are you facing more and more challenges as the time goes?
So, I'm involved in a number of things. So, there are a number of laws because it's going to be legal. States are legally obliged. If you're going to have a treaty, except for certain ones who ignore them, but if you actually are going to have laws, you need to show states why they are obliged to follow them. And we haven't had enough of that. So we are involved in educating member states on certain obligations vis-a-vis, for example, the Global Plastics Treaty. They have obligations. There's the precautionary principle in the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea that says don't take more than is necessary. At the moment, a maximum sustainable yield averages 30% of the entire population of that species. I'm sorry. I don't think that it just doesn't make sense again. And the other point is that the science at the time was what we fished at the top, where fish are fast producing. Then we went down into the depths and did the same thing with them and have made them virtually extinct, because in lower depths, they grow slower, they produce far, far less and far less often. So, there has to be a precautionary principle. You cannot keep going and think that this is a business. It's not a golden goose if you kill the golden goose. It could be thriving. It could be. I'm not saying don't fish. I just want people to fish with care and with precaution. And we can do that. So yes, I am seeing some signs. So the first thing is get those into place, get the international treaties into place. I know people go on about the UN, oh, it doesn't do this. Let me assure you, it is a micro web that holds so many things together. It gets a lot of flack, but those laws are treaties that member states have said we will commonly agree to do. It's our word, it's our trust. And if we can't trust a state, then we have problems.
What would you say to a younger you that happens to be living now, not the past you, but if you were 20 years old now, what would you say to that person?
I would say be braver than I ever was. Trust yourself that you can do more than you think you can do. Treat yourself with compassion, because the age of climate grief and biodiversity loss is a very real thing. Find community, find your community, find your peeps. Make small message groups where you can help each other. You need it. We need community. But find the same values. If you have these values and you care for them, live them, work to them. Don't compromise yourself unless you have to, because we all have to earn a living. We all have to survive. Then don't beat yourself up, but don't forget it, because at one point in your life, you'll be able to come back to it.
Great. Well, we've been talking together for like almost an hour and a half now. We could, stay together. We need a second episode because I still have many questions about how mass fishing and criminal organizations are connected.
And I will. No, you've got a better contact than me. I'm going to put you in touch with him. Amazing, amazing people.
Cool. And well, where do our listeners can find you?
At Gallifrey Foundation, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Cool. I'll add all the links under the description of this video. And do you have any final word for our listeners and our viewers?
Yes, I would say what David Attenborough's Blue Planet did to plastic pollution, ocean will do to bottom trawling and overfishing. Go see it. There's hope at the end. The UN Ocean Conference takes place next month in Nice. Mm-hmm. And we're laughing because the acronym for UN Ocean is UNOC. And I've basically said I'm going with nutcrackers because if they don't agree stuff, we're using those nutcrackers and we'll make them UNOCs.
Nice one. Well, I hope you would not go to this extent, but if you do, please record this to me. I would like to see it.
We like to have a little bit of a wicked sense of humor as well. Otherwise, what's the point? If there's no joy in what we do, why bother?
Perfect. Well, Antoinette, it was a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed making it. Ecosystemic is available on all major platforms: YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, and pretty much everywhere. Please support us by subscribing, sharing with people. We try to bring in the show the best guests, providing unbiased and honest feedback about these issues. Don't forget, if you want to take a step further and support us, support Zero. Go to nomorezero.com and get yours. It's not only a portable battery, it's a movement. And to get more fun, join the community.lepo.tech, where you will meet passionate people just like you, building together from initiatives to open source projects to supporting our actions. And for that, I can't thank you enough. Until the next episode, see you soon. Bye-bye.